Let's kick things off with a question. It's a question you've probably thought about at some point, even if you didn't really have a name for it.
So, what do you think? Is it ever okay to steal? I mean, your first reaction, my first reaction, is probably a hard no, right? Of course not. Stealing is wrong. But what if? What if breaking that rule was the only way to do something really, really good? Suddenly, it's not so black and white, is it? You definitely broke a rule, but you also saved people's lives. And that tension, right there, that pull between a wrong action and a right outcome, that's the heart of ethics. Today, we're going to build a toolkit to help us think through exactly these kinds of problems.
And that's really why ethics is so important. It's not just about what feels right in your gut. It gives us a framework, a set of tools to move past that feeling and actually build a solid argument for why something is the right thing to do. It's the logic we use for our moral choices.
You know, for a long, long time, especially in fields like medicine, the main ethical idea was actually pretty simple and powerful. First, do no harm. The Hippocratic Oath made this the gold standard. It's a noble idea, right? A promise to always try to help and never to hurt. But what happens when that simple principle just isn't enough?
Well, the 20th century showed us, in the most horrific way imaginable, what happens when ethical principles aren't just bent, but completely shattered. This crisis forced the entire world to realize that we needed a much more robust, much more explicit ethical framework built from the ground up.
And you can really see that story unfold on this timeline. We start way back in ancient Greece with that simple ideal of do no harm. Then, bam, a massive leap forward right after 1946. The Nuremberg Trials exposed these just unthinkable medical experiments by Nazi doctors. And that led directly to the Nuremberg Code in 1947, which established a principle we now take for granted, informed consent. Then, sadly, another tragic failure, the Tuskegee study, led to the 1979 Belmont Report, which gave us the three core principles we still rely on today: respect for persons, beneficence, and justice.
So, history gave us some very important rules. But to really get the why behind those rules, we need to look at the big philosophical ideas that have been shaping our thinking for centuries. It turns out there are basically three major ways to think about an ethical problem.
So, here you have two really different ways of looking at the world. On one side, you've got consequentialism. This one's pretty straightforward. Only the results matter. Think about our fire extinguisher again. People were saved. That's a good outcome. A consequentialist would say, great job, you did the right thing. But on the other side, you have deontology, which focuses only on the rules. A deontologist would say, whoa, hold on, your moral duty is not to steal, period. For them, the good outcome doesn't change the fact that the action itself was wrong.
And then there's a third way to look at all this. Virtue theory kind of steps back from the whole debate about actions and outcomes and asks a totally different question. It's not about what should I do, it's about what kind of person should I be. So someone thinking this way would ask, what would a compassionate person do here, or a courageous person? It's all about building good character. Now, those big theories are fantastic for understanding the why of it all. But let's be real, if you're a doctor who needs to make a life or death decision right now, you need something more practical. You need an actionable toolkit. And that's exactly what modern bioethics has created. So, how do they do it? Well, in the world of bioethics, it all really boils down to four core principles. Think of them as the pillars that guide professionals through the most confusing and difficult ethical dilemmas you can imagine. And here they are. First, you've got respect for autonomy. That's just about respecting a patient's right to make their own choices. Then there's beneficence, which is your duty to actively do good for the patient. But that has to be balanced by non-maleficence, which is the modern version of first, do no harm. And finally, we have justice, making sure that treatments and resources are distributed fairly. It's really this framework, this balancing act between these four principles that helps people make the best possible decision. But here's the thing. These decisions don't exist in a vacuum. They don't just affect one single person. Sometimes the most ethical choice means we have to zoom out and think about the impact on everyone, on the whole community. This idea is captured so powerfully by the Southern African philosophy of Ubuntu. I am because we are. It's this deep understanding that our individual well-being is completely tied up with the well-being of our community. This perspective, which is called communitarianism, adds another really important layer to our toolkit. It forces us to ask, okay, this choice might be good for one person, but what does it mean for all of us together? Okay, so we've got the big theories, we've got the 4 principles. How do we actually put all this into practice? Well, here's a simple, really practical process. Step 1, just figure out what the problem actually is. Step 2, gather all the facts you can. Step 3, see what the experts or the official guidelines have to say. Step 4, you weigh your different options using all those ethical tools we just talked about. And finally, step 5, you make a moral assessment and you're ready to explain it.
So the next time you find yourself facing a tough choice, big or small, you won't just have a gut feeling to go on. Now you have a toolkit. You have a process for thinking it through, for weighing the consequences, the rules, and, of course, the kind of person you want to be. The only question is, how will you use it?